Wow, what a school year it's been. Buzzwords. Are you sick of the word remote learning? Hybrid learning? How about this word? Pivot. Oh, if you hear that word one more time, you're going to throw up. Hi, I'm John Bergmann, and like you, I'm a physics teacher. I teach physics, chemistry, and geology at a suburban school in Houston, Texas. And I've also had a weird life, okay, in the world of education. I started teaching in 1986. I'm old. Taught at middle school first, and then I taught high school most of my career. And for 24 years, I taught in Colorado. And what a great time that was. Towards the end of that time, about year 19, I guess it was, myself and Aaron Sams helped develop and pioneer the flipped learning movement. I know that Eric has done some significant work in this in the higher ed space. I've had this crazy privilege. I've written 10 books. And yeah, so I've had a crazy career. So I taught for 24 years in Colorado, and then I was director of technology for 2 years in the Chicago metropolitan areas. And then I did something that many of you may someday want to do, or maybe you despise what I did. I became an educational consultant. I was the guy who came in with the clipboard, walked around, and or the clipboard, the PowerPoint, and what's the definition of an expert? Somebody who's from out of town with the PowerPoint. I was that guy, and it was a great privilege. I really got to travel all over the world and see schools, from Australia to Dubai to New Zealand to Argentina to China to London and Turkey, all over the place. At a certain point, I realized that I was trying to tell other people's stories, and I felt the pull back to the classroom. So 2 years ago, I started teaching again. So I'm back teaching. I'm just a regular teacher, like you, at a high school, probably not dissimilar from yours. Working to do the best that I can with my students. So let's start by imagining something. I want you to imagine that your students come to your classroom with a wide variety of ability levels. Some come with the math gene, right? Physics teachers, and they get it, man, math, easy. And some come really struggling. But imagine that oftentimes you get students like in the middle of the year, like after 3 weeks, you get a new student, another week, another week, another week. I had a chance to talk with some teachers in Ramstein, Germany, Department of Defense teachers, and this is their reality. Oftentimes when a serviceman, American serviceman, is deployed or moves, I think whatever the term is, to Germany, then the students will miss a month of school when they're moving from Georgia to Ramstein, Germany, or whatever it might be. And they have to figure out a way to teach all students. And so you can't teach the same thing at the same time, all the students, or you'll just be unsuccessful. And they have been very, very successful with what I really want to talk about is the model that we're going to introduce today. And my guess is you're saying, wait a second, that's kind of my reality right now. My kids or will be my reality, because when we go back to school soon, right? We're going back to school just a month or so. We're going to face a crazy different reality post-COVID, right? Hoping at least we can all actually be back in school. We'll see what happens, right? I did an interesting exercise, just thought exercise on the internet. I asked the question, COVID and school. And this is what I found. This is what a class looks like in Taiwan, or did. Argentina, University of Oklahoma, that looks fun. Not really. Pantheon University in France, Japan, the University of Kentucky, the Vatican, South Korea. And then I looked deeper, the United Kingdom. These are pictures from the teacher's perspective. Stanford Med, Furman University, Harvard. This is not Eric's class, but it could be. Indonesia, South Korea, Brookings Institute, physics class at the University of Hawaii, New York University, Switzerland, the USA, and physics class, Westlake High School. If you're out there, Westlake High School physics teacher, there you are. And Carleton High School, Minnesota, also a physics class, I was told at least. So what are we going to face? What are we going to face when we walk back in August or September of this year? What's going to be the reality of our lives? And I want to use some terms, and they're a bit controversial. I think what we're going to face is we're going to face learning loss. Our students are going to come back to our classes having lost some learning. Now, I know this is controversial because the students have learned things in the pandemic and some very important lessons. So don't hear that I think what's happening is many educational companies are trying to make a bunch of money off of educators, off of schools, because they can, hey, we solved learning loss. I did some research, found out, what's some of the research on learning loss. A study done by McKinsey and Company with 350,000 students. Now it's K-5, so I couldn't find anything that was K or high school kids. But I thought it was interesting. They segregated, and this is the amount of students, how much their scores dropped by grade level, and also segregated by schools with less than 50% students of color and those with more than 50% students of color. Or I didn't say that right, more than 50% students of color, more than 50% white students. And sadly, the results are not that great. They then said, if we make some projections about this school year that's just now finished, what is our projections? Again, McKinsey and Company says, if there's no progress in the way we teach, that's worst case scenario. Second case is we hold the status quo. Third case, we learn how to do remote learning better. And fourth case, we actually get back to school. And this was what the projections were. They said if we don't improve the way we teach during this school year that's already expired, we're going to get an average of 10 months loss. If we hold the status quo, it's 9. All right, if we learn how to teach remotely better, 6. And if we literally get back to school, 5. Now, most of us, I don't know. I'm not sure what percentage, I haven't seen that data, of schools that actually went back. My school was able to get back to mostly full-time kids with masks and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where you guys were at, but let's say best case, that we've lost 5 months of learning. I mean, think of that 5 months in an algebra class when they're about to take a physics class. Wow, that's going to be a problem. But also there's a weird reality. We say 5 months, but some kids thrived in the remote setting, and they're way ahead, and some kids are way behind. So it's not like it's not like they're all 5 months behind, and I can treat like they're all 5 months behind. How do I do that, right? That's a big question. So where are we going to look? Where are we going to look to find the answer to this? I'm going to argue we want to take a look back. And I want us to look back to this cat right here, Benjamin Bloom. You guys remember him, right? Bloom's Taxonomy and all that kind of stuff. Well, Ben Bloom in 1984 wrote what I'm going to argue might be one of the most important papers in the history of education. And this is the paper right here. It's the 2 sigma problem. The search for methods of group instruction that are as good as tutoring. So, one-on-one tutoring. So evidence suggests that the best way to learn is for your daughter, your son, a student to learn via one-on-one tutoring. So you hire a tutor. So you're Prince Harry, right? And the Queen says, I'm going to hire a tutor, and he's going to tutor Prince Harry, and he's going to learn that way. That's the best way. All right. So here's the graph from the article. You can kind of see the old font here. Conventional instruction gets you one result right here. And then if you move to mastery learning, you get 1 standard deviation improvement. But if you move to one-on-one tutoring, you get 2 standard deviations improvement. We could implement mastery learning, but most of us are still teaching this way. And these are 1 and 2 standard deviations improvement. Dr. Bloom said this: if the research on the 2 sigma problem yields practical methods that the average teacher or school faculty can learn in a brief period of time and use with little more cost or time than conventional instructions, it would be an educational contribution of the greatest magnitude. It would change popular notions about human potential and would have significant effects on what schools can and should do with the educational years each society requires of its young people. An educational contribution of the greatest magnitude. Folks, I'm going to make a bold claim. I'm going to claim that the problem has been solved. We know the answer to the 2 sigma problem. In fact, let's listen in to a student in a 2 sigma class.
This class is more laid back. It's chill, but you're still learning. Like, you're actually letting in the knowledge. It's like the flipped part of it. Like, you're more independent and you can go at your own pace, but you're still on track. You can't fail. It's kind of impossible to fail this class, to be honest, because you're literally given every resource possible to pass this class. Like, you are able, like, master it, because you don't move on until you have mastered it. I mean, the test not necessarily, but, like, your mastery quizzes, like, you know them in, like, the notes, and then the quizzes are with the notes, and, like, just every resource that you give us helps us to succeed. It's like, you know what you're going to be doing, and you can go ahead. Like, you go at your own pace, you can go ahead, you can be a little bit behind because you get time in class to also work on your stuff. We are capable of learning it on our own with all the resources that you give us.
So hopefully you've kind of figured this out. We've got this mastery piece in this double sigma class that we want to take a look at. And you notice you talked about flip. So what we're really talking about is a merging of flipped learning with mastery learning. But before we can talk too much about mastery learning, let's learn about some of the basics of flip learning. So maybe it's best to look at Bloom's taxonomy, back to Mr. Bloom. And if you looked at my class those first 24 years, you know what you found? You found that I spent the vast majority of my time, use that time as the area of the triangle, on the lower levels of Bloom's, at the remembering and understanding level. I was standing up teaching them Newton's laws, I was teaching them, you know, friction problems, I was teaching them momentum problems, or whatever it might be. And then we had little time in class to apply. We did experiments and that kind of stuff. But usually this stuff at the top, if you will call it the hard stuff, I sent them home to do. But of course, in a flipped learning environment, what do? You flip Bloom's taxonomy on its head, and you spend less class time on the lower level introductory information, and you spend class time, you know, at the higher levels of Bloom's. In fact, as I've thought more deeply about this, I think honestly the best picture is this right here, the Bloom's pyramid. And again, time is the variable. You spend less class time here. The bulk of your class time is at the application analysis level. And I just don't think it's realistic to spend too much time up here in a K-12 classroom. Maybe at the university, or particularly at a PhD level or master's thesis level, certainly up here. But, and again, hear me carefully, I'm not anti-lecture. A lot of people think that flipped learning is anti-lecture. Not true. I still lecture. I've got these cheesy videos on momentum and friction and electricity and magnetism and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and you probably have had your students watch some videos because of the pandemic. I think you get the idea. So what's the answer? Maybe you've already heard it out. It is the flipped mastery learning. So it's a merging of two pedagogies, flipped learning and mastery learning. And this is the mastery learning cycle. And I want you to just kind of pay close attention. It always starts with clear, very specific objectives. Like, you know, the student will be able to solve a Newton's second law problem given the following parameters, or something very, very specific, all right? And then, so you've set that up, then you have a pretest to see what they already know, all right? And then we move over here to the independent space. That's the stuff they're going to do on their own. That tends to be the flip video or some reading. By the way, don't just flip with video, you could do a text. Eric flips his classes with text-based stuff, right? Then we have group space. This group space is the activities you're going to do in the class. We call it the group space. Then you have some sort of an assessment called a mastery check. And then, if needed, you remediate them. And then they start the process with the next learning objective. If you remediate, you got to come back to another place if that's necessary. So that's a big idea on the mastery cycle, I guess. So the bulk of the time, I want to talk to you about sort of the features, for lack of a better term, of flipped mastery learning. Now, let me say this also. This is not I'm not going to be able to teach you how to do every aspect of flipped mastery learning in this short period of time. I have some resources that will help you get started. I'm in fact at the very moment, this whole summer, my main goal is to write a book. I'm writing a book. Like I said, I've written 10. This will be my 11th book. And this is the entire focus of this. And I hope that you'll pick it up. It'll be available sometime next year, like 2022. But what are the 11 pillars? Number one is there is no whole class instruction. Wait a second, what did you say? I have not lectured to the whole class since 2007. Now, hear me carefully. I still lecture in these cheesy videos that my students are watching right here. So I still think students don't know what they don't know, and I still think there's a place for me to teach them what they don't know. So I mainly make videos, but I also allow my students the option of reading. So as a note, I give them choice. Number two is they must have what's called a flexible pace. So the idea of mastery is, I mean, if you think about it, you're probably thinking, this is impossible. My students are going to be at different places in the content. Exactly. So I don't like to say that they work at their own pace, because if I found this, maybe your students are different than mine, but if I told my students they could work at their own pace, I would have some students who wouldn't have a pace. True that, right? That's true. So I set up benchmarks. At the end of every week, I say, or at the beginning of the week, I say, by the end of this week, you need to be through objective 5 or something like that. And if they don't, they have some deductions and points on their grades. So it's a flexible pace that they're moving class through. Next up is what I call extreme differentiation. I am able to differentiate and really challenge my high students and really remediate and help the students who struggle. It's magical. In fact, let's watch a video of what a typical classroom looks like. Note this is last year pre-pandemic. Now note that was my geology class, so it wasn't a physics class, but I think you get the idea. I like to call this like my 6-ring circus or whatever. I've got lots of different things happening at the same time. It's organized, and folks, it's magical. Absolutely magical, works all the time. I do this with chemistry, it's crazy. You can even do this in a chemistry class. It's the only way I know how to teach, to be honest with you. In fact, recently, it was towards the end of the school year, I had a student come up to me and say, Mr. Bergmann, I'm thinking about taking physics, but I'm worried. I said, how come? As a student that I just knew, we have like an advisory, he's in my advisory, and I said, what's going on? And he said, I'm afraid of the class. He says, do you teach it with that mastery method? I said, yeah. Oh, man, I hear that makes it so much easier. I'm not sure the right answer is easier, but it's more doable for students. It takes off the pressure. Because if a student, we'll talk later about it, the summative assessments, particularly, my school's a high-performing school, and high-performing schools, there's so much pressure to be super, good at everything, and if you can't score super high on the test, there's just huge worry. Anyways, number 4, teacher-student interactions. You know what I do most of my time? I spend most of my time doing is I spend most of my time walking around and talking to kids. And I feel like I really know my students so much better. I know them better cognitively, but also affectively. I really can get inside their brains. Number 5, the class becomes a collaborative moment. It's not me against the students. I'm not trying to play gotcha. My students really are working together to master certain goals and objectives that have been previously very well spelled out. Probably you've already got this list of objectives. You just need to master flippy it. Is that a word? I don't know. I'll make it a word. Let's talk about the formative assessment, because what I'm doing is I'm walking in the room as I'm doing formative assessments. I'm walking around. You can see me having one again, more clips from the geology class, and I'm having a formative check with my students. I'm asking them to prove to me that they've learned something, and I have to check that they've actually learned it. And if they haven't, I'll make them go back and relearn it. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I'll get a stack of papers from, either it's a test or even just a regular assignment. And I'm going to check. One student gets an 84. That's pretty good. Another kid's an 80. Another kid's a 96. But one kid gets a 32. And you know what I used to do? I used to take that 32 and put it in the grade book. And when I put that in the grade book, we moved on. But now if I have a kid who brings me the 32, I'm going to say, no, go back and fix it. In fact, by the way, I expect students essentially to get an 80 on every single thing. And as a note, there's nothing magical about 80%. I've seen any number between 70 and 80%. As I've been writing the book, I've been talking to teachers. I've probably talked to 25 Flip Mastery teachers across the world, and I've seen the range from 70 to 80. So I'm at the high end, but I do teach at a high-performing school, so I'm going to expect my students to do 80% work. So they have to do that, and I expect them to actually master the content. So what about summative assessment? So here's the heart and soul of the mastery course or idea, is they get to the end of, let's say I've got a unit, and it's got 4 lessons. Let's make maybe 5, but whatever. We'll call 4 lessons. All right. A student comes to me, check. Oh, they didn't quite get 3, and then sometimes they move on to 4. But then once they've done 4, they come back and get number 4 done. Now they can take the summative assessment. So they take the summative assessment. My expectation, honestly, folks, is that they get greater than 80%. Now, you may disagree with how I do that. If the student doesn't get an 80, they get a 75 or even a 79, I expect them to retake the exam until they get an 80. Now, I know some teachers who just give the exam one time, allow test corrections. There's lots of ways to do this, but I let them take it over and over again. And but that means that delays their progress, if that makes sense. Because now they have to go back while other students are moving ahead who've actually passed this. But it works, I promise, it does. One way I've made it work is that I have created thousands of versions of the test. So in my learning management system, I use Brightspace, by the way, sometimes called D2L. D2L is the company. And what I do is I have these folders, the test banks, test bank 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I write maybe 5 or 6 questions or 10 questions or whatever. And then when the student sits down, it randomly picks so many questions that I specify from each folder. And if I write these questions well, then that means they get a different test. So every kid who takes the test gets a different test. And my platform even has like what they call mathematical, or they call 2 plus 2 questions. And there what I can do is I could say given, and I'm typing in, it's like a code, X kilograms, an X kilogram cart on a 15-degree angle or a Y degree angle, And then the numbers change each time, so their answers will change each time if they end up with the same question. So there really are thousands of versions of the test that are possible. Another hallmark of a flipped mastery class is that you can give immediate feedback. In one sense, as I walk around the room, I am giving immediate feedback formatively, but I can also do this summatively. So once a student takes the exam we talked about just a few minutes ago, they know they're going to come up to me, I'm going to go over their exam. Remember, they're not all taking the exam on the same day, they're taking it when they're ready, and when they take it, well, let's just listen in on a session. A student in my chemistry class had come up to me and I recorded this. So this student has missed a particular question, and now I'm going over the question with him, having a conversation, and the question is up on the screen that you can see, and we're going over what he did wrong, so that when he takes it again, if he chooses to, then he'll know what he got wrong. But he still has to pass with the 80, and if he doesn't, then he's going to be required to take it over again. And now I'm about to check what his score is. I'm re-entering, because I gave him some partial credit. Notice I also had a piece of paper, so I was grading his piece of paper where he was showing his work. You can see the next student showing up to get his test. We actually called them boss battles set up. And I'm pretty sure this student passed. Watch what happens. Oh, he sees his score. He's very happy. And notice what I do. I've got a gong. And we all celebrate when a student passes their boss battle, and it's a lot of fun for the students. They love that aspect of what's going on. Next thing I often do, that often flip mastery teachers are doing, is they're gamifying it. And I've gamified mine, just super simple deal. I have like a leaderboard, and which objective they're on, they get a magnet and we move it across. I have been so surprised that this has been so effective for high school juniors and teens. Mr. Bergmann, can I move my mark? Can I move my mark? Yes, you can move your mark. They just love moving their mark across the board. That's all I do. It's a little spreadsheet. And number 11, the last one, it's all about relationships. I believe that good teaching is only good when you can connect with students. And I just feel like, I don't know, I had some really kind words shared with me from my students at the end of the school year, just how much they felt like I cared, which I do, but it's good to hear from them sometimes. It makes a difference. Let's take a look at another clip. This is a year and a half ago or so, one of my physics students.
But it's getting faster, right? So it's going, it's around 10. After 1 second, it's going 10, and then 20, and then 30, and then 40. And I drop this every second. It's going 10 meters per second faster. 10, 20, and 30. So the difference is what they're getting.
Can I come take it?
And so here she just had passed her boss battle. This is actually a year ago, no gong. The gong became a new thing this year. But anyways, she was awesome and she did well, and I feel like that makes the connections with the students. So those are the 11 things. And now I want to talk about what COVID might make possible. Now let me first say this. COVID has been a tragedy. I'm sure you have. It's been a horrible tragedy. But also I think, I'm going to say opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to rethink how we teach. I mean, we've all had a big reset in our lives. We've been stuck at home. We've had to decide what really matters to us. It's been an introspective year for so many people. I know it has been for me. And I've so changed during the COVID time. I also realize this is an opportunity for us to reset when we go to school this fall, to rethink how we teach. I'm not going to argue what we teach. I believe physics education is super valuable. Most students should take physics. I mean, we can all talk about that. And other people in this conference will do that very well. But it's important to rethink how we teach. The traditional method really doesn't work. It doesn't, guys. Research bears it out. I mean, if we're scientists, and we are, and we believe in research, then we ought to believe the research that says that passive learning doesn't work. Active learning is what works. And I'm going to argue that flipped, and especially when merged with mastery, is the ideal active way for students to learn. So yeah, I want to really, really encourage you to rethink and think outside of the box. If we use the same old thinking, we're going to get the same results, and that's not going to work. It's not going to fly anymore. We've got students who've been learning and thriving in the remote world, and they're not going to stand for a boring lecture anymore because they know that they can just go find it on YouTube. And that's the reality of it, isn't it? Let me show you some pictures. Some pictures of that I've gotten I got these about 2 years ago. I use these in my TED Talk. I encourage you to listen to it if you ever have a chance to. But in my TED Talk, as I was preparing for that, I reached out to people who are doing flipped and flip mastery learning across the world, and I said, send me a picture of your class. Notice how these classes look. This is what one looks like in Iceland. This class, oh my gosh. I visited this school in Iceland. What an amazing thing they're doing with like the dropouts of Icelandic education, and they have changed the entire lives of these students. This is one of the great flip learning teachers in Taiwan. Morocco, this guy's flipped the whole school. It's an English language school in Morocco. See how active they are? Again, pre-pandemic, so you're probably freaking out as you see these pictures. Singapore, Iran. My friend Reza in Iran, and the work he's done with mastery and flip learning in Iran is amazing. Harvard Medical School. I got a chance to visit Richard Schwartzstein's class. That's Richard there kind of in the, I guess, the right. And Richard has done some amazing stuff. They flipped Harvard Medical School. So, by the way, if you think, oh, I'm teaching my students how to learn the hard way by lecture and tests and finals and da-da-da-da, because that's the way we do it in college, that may not be true, guys. That may not be true. This is the first flipped school in all of New Zealand, Ashurst Primary School. I got a chance to visit this school, and recently I've been actually talking with their people because they've really done so much with mastery just in preparation for this book I'm writing on mastery learning. Oh my gosh, what an amazing cast of characters they've got there. So it's a K-8 school, by the way, and what they're saying is that their students are the best prepared when they get to the high school, the equivalent of the high school for them. Hong Kong, Nigeria, Turkey, the first flipped university, an engineering school in Turkey, and they're flipping. This is crazy, guys. The United Kingdom, Spain, Australia, China, Argentina. By the way, here in Argentina, I visited these schools. In Argentina, they're flipping the entire province of Misiones, like a whole state, with 300,000 students, K-12. Close to where I used to live in Chicago, and right in my class in Houston, Texas. There we're doing, looks like, breadboards, my physics class, working with the students in the class. So let's, as we're closing, let's hear from some students about their thoughts on flip mastery.
I think that flip mastery is a very useful tool to use in class because it is a good practice of time management and being organized, since we can watch the videos at home and come to school to get straight into doing the classwork. And that means that we're ready for assessments, we're not behind or anything like that. So, yeah, and we get good results in assessments.
In class time, we have more time to do the practical work. When studying at home, you can make use of the study for 25 minutes and have 5-minute break system. This way you will always be at the peak of your focus and have time to reset. You can advance only once the teacher has seen your work and thinks you're prepared for the next stage. I would highly recommend the Flip Mastery Learning System, and I think all schools should be using it.
To work at your own pace, and it fits you whether you're more slow or work at a faster pace. It also means that you can do the test whenever you feel comfortable, meaning you'll get better results in the end.
With mastery learning, I found it way easier to go at my own pace so that I knew if I was behind, I could catch up by myself and not have to rely on the teachers as much.
So I've been doing flip learning for a while, but mastery learning is an experiment this year. And what I've noticed is that it doesn't seem to matter what level the students are working at. They work at their own pace, they're engaged, and they feel confident in the material when they come up and do their checkpoint flip mastery test with me. And because I'm seeing them and giving them individual feedback, we both feel confident about their progress, and only then will they move on. So it means that they will only be assessed once they have shown me that they are confident in all of the concepts, so that everybody will be assessed at different times. So we're, in essence, doing less, but doing it better.
I think the mastery learning system is a really good way to actually get the grade students deserve. With the mastery learning system, I think it gives kids the opportunity to really work for their grade and decide how much they care about the outcome of their work. It is a lot less stressful than getting a random grade because you know around where the grade will fall and what grade you truly deserve.
I've enjoyed using the flipped classroom method for 2 reasons. First, the flipped classroom method allows students to watch the videos at their own pace. Secondly, the flipped classroom method enables students to ask questions over the videos during class.
What I learned in Mr. Bergmann's class was really just how far I could push myself mentally and academically. So I had his physics class, and since that has a lot of math in it, I struggled with that class quite a bit. So in order to pass his tests, or boss battles, you would have to get a grade 80 or above in order to say you're done with it. And because of that, I got to take the test a lot of times, and so I would be out taking time outside of class, before school started and after school started, in his classroom, taking these tests and asking him questions about things I had gotten wrong on the test. And it differs from other classes because whatever the material is, whatever grade you get on the test, you're done with that stuff. With this class, it really doesn't work that way because you have to know it in order to get a grade. Otherwise, if you don't know it, you still have to take it. And so now that I have done that, I know I really can put effort with the teacher outside his class, really trying to learn this. And so that's what flipped mastery learning has done for me.
Are you motivated as I am? I know I'm proud of my students for what they've done and what they've accomplished. And I challenge you to rethink how you teach. Could you teach differently? I think the answer is yes. I know I'm asking a lot. This is a lot of work, but this is a time to reset and rethink. Now, if you want more information, I encourage you to go to my website at johnbergmann.com. Probably the best thing you can do is pick up a copy of our first book, Flip Your Classroom. In the second half, we talk about flip mastery. Although some of the mastery stuff that were in the book is a little bit outdated. That's why I'm writing this new book. I'd encourage you to pick it up, but it won't be available until sometime March or February of next year, 2022. But I'm also writing articles, a series of articles about the 11 things, and you can get four or five of them, depending on what time you're watching this, on the website. So I encourage you again to go to the website. Again, I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you. So feel free to reach out to me on my website, but also feel free, we're about to have a conversation. What I love about this is Eric set this up so that I've been talking to you already while you're watching me, which is weird. And now we're going to talk live together. So yeah, you can make the difference. You are the most important person in that classroom. I know it sounds weird and sounds self-centered, but you're the one who sets the tone and can make the difference. And the beauty is that you and we have the privilege of changing the lives of students. Let's go do it.